Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
We are making it all make sense, sort of, if we can, for you. It's 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company as we pick up the pieces of the shattered gavel in the House of Representatives. At 6:35, Cal Thomas will join us. 7:35, Byron York. At 7:45, we'll take a quick break and talk about the race in Fairfax County for State Senate. Julie Perry, that teacher who was persecuted by the school board member she's running against. 8:05, Newt Gingrich. And at 8:35, David Marcus, who always brings some sanity to the proceedings. So does Julie Gunlock. We're glad you're here, Julie.
Thanks. Good morning.
I do, you always wonder when you walk in on a morning like this, it's like, well, I wonder where Julie is on this. I wonder, because you never know.
Sure.
And we're sort of the same mind, which is, again, not Team McCarthy, not Team Gates, Team Get something done.
Yeah, get it done.
And I will say this also, and I don't mean to sound like I'm piling on McCarthy, because I haven't had a whole lot of criticism of him this year. But I did always get the sense, and I know I said this during the drama of the votes in January. I keep going back to that when he was sort of debasing himself to get those last few votes to get the gavel. And from that point, for the most part, for the last 9 months, I've gotten the sense that Kevin McCarthy wanted to be Speaker a lot more than he wanted to do the job of Speaker. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think that it was like, this is my destiny. This is my job. I've been in leadership. I've dotted the I's. I've crossed the T's. I've raised the money. I've pounded the pavement. I'm the heir apparent. It's time. And by the way, he's, unlike Trump and unlike Mitch McConnell, he has actually, over the last several elections, continued to win and grow his caucus, his caucus. And so, when everybody else lost in 2020, he grew his majority his minority in the House, I should say. And when the midterms didn't go well for the Senate, he did get the majority. Yes, not as big as he was hoping, but he got it. So I think he thought that he was entitled to it, and he got it, and he did whatever he had to do to get it, but he created such an untenable position for himself that it was doomed to fail.
Can I push back a little bit on that? And I'm going to offer a very Pollyanna sort of.
Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, my Midwest roots are coming out here, but can I just suggest that, instead of he wanted it, he was ambitious, and he made this, sort of embarrassing, humiliating deal to get it. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about how it's like, well, who else? Who's going to, and even Gates is like, well, I don't know who we're going to, maybe McCarthy was like, look, I'm the one who probably can get the votes. Yes, it'll take some negotiation, but there was so much friction and anger and we're not all
baggage.
on the same. Yes.
There was a lot of
that,
baggage.
like, who else would have done it? Who else could have actually, really, besides McCarthy. And maybe he said, I'm going to do this because I'm the only one who can, literally.
I think you might be right, and I'm sorry, but I think that a lot of that baggage and a lot of that friction was because of Kevin McCarthy's past. The fact that he came in the Eric Cantor, Paul Ryan mode. Yes. I think that there were a lot of people who just inherently, instinctively mistrusted him, and a new person might actually, a lot of that's going to go away.
Well, I get it. And let me say, we act like the Republican Party has just suddenly had problems, right? Or, what's going on? This is just a new thing. No. We've had decades of bad leadership, decades. And you mentioned the young guns, and we mentioned these other, and sort of what now makes up a lot of the sort of never Trump coalition of Republicans. It's been a mess for a long time. Yep. This is not new.
John Boehner promised in 2010, and he won. That was a 50-seat win in 2010, firing Nancy Pelosi. This is 2 years after the huge victory of Barack Obama. And John Boehner said, you get me this gavel, we'll get back to regular order. And we still haven't gotten back to regular order. All right. Paul Ryan said the same thing. McCarthy said the same thing. It's just...
Well, we had the White House, we had the Senate, we had the House not so long ago,
and we still didn't do it. Yeah. All right. So Matt Gaetz is on Laura Ingraham last night, as you do. And he said this.
I want to get right to the criticism, chief criticism by some of your GOP colleagues that we've been covering, that and the angle made the point that it took your aligning with Democrats and even pals of Liz Cheney and the Republican Party like Ken Buck to produce a result that as of now has no solution. So what's your response to that?
Well, the solution's quite easy. We should get to electing a new, more conservative, more trustworthy speaker immediately. I'm calling on Patrick McHenry, who currently is the Speaker pro tem, to reconsider the decision that he just made to send everyone in Congress home for a week. This is not the time to go home for a week. We should stay and elect a new speaker. That's the path ahead. As far as the criticism that I worked with...
Let me pause there for a minute. Do you agree with that? Actually, I think it would do the majority of the Republicans good to go back to their districts and hear from their constituents.
I agree. I always agree with that.
I think after a moment like this, I think it would do everyone, every single Republican would be benefited by going home and hearing from the people on the ground and then coming back and saying, well, I got an earful and here's what they think. Staying here in D.C. and sort of hammering out something I think shows business as usual D.C. inside.
Yeah,
stuff.
I 100% agree. I always agree. Go home. Talk to your constituents.
Democrats, the yellow brick road of working with Democrats was paved by Kevin McCarthy. Whether it was the debt limit deal, whether it was the continuing resolutions, this is a guy who was willing to partner with conservatives on the frivolous, but whenever there was a spending matter, he partnered with Democrats. That said, Speaker McCarthy's time is over. I wish him well. I have no personal animus to him. I hope he finds fruitful pastures, and I'm certain he will. But we've got a job to do here. This is about the job. This is about keeping our commitment to have single subject spending bills.
All right, and again, by the way, Chip Roy, who forced that issue on single-subject spending bills back in January, said that's exactly what we were doing. So now we've got this conflict between Roy and Gates on this thing. Laura Ingraham.
I want to get right to the criticism, the chief criticism.
Oh, shoot. Come on, man.
Right. Continuing resolutions, the budget, the spending, it's a total nightmare. But the fact of the matter is, y'all don't have the votes. You don't have the margin to get from A to B to C.
Right. All they have is the votes to say no.
Yeah.
But they don't have the votes to actually move forward with a yes, right?
And so how does this get you closer?
I categorically reject that we don't have the votes for a budget.
Hold on a second, Matt. How do you get closer to all these things that are legitimate concerns when you still have a Senate that says no can do? I mean, you got several senators who are actually completely on the other side on a lot of these issues.
Right.
You still have that to contend with. So how do you get to your nirvana points, which are the conservative holy grail points of governance, the way we're going?
The Senate does not control how the House approaches its spending business.
But I'm sorry, but we've seen this play out. That's a little naive because the Senate, the House can do whatever the hell they want. But if the Senate doesn't pass it, it's dead.
It's dead. And you have to start over. Yeah.
So everyone who says that the House controls the purse strings, yeah, but not unilaterally.
And the Senate does get a say. Yeah, I get it.
All right, so a little bit more, but that's mostly of what Gates had to say. By the way, a little note about the appearance on Laura Ingraham. Gates was in the middle of the interview, and then McCarthy went and took the podium for his post-ouster press conference, and they interrupted Gates and said, all right, yeah, we got to go to McCarthy now.
But then it was good because he could comment on it, which was interesting.
WMAL. Making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Have ugly garage floors? SkylineConcreteCoating.com.
Weeknights with Mark Levin, 6 to 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news.
I also want to address this notion that we aren't conservatives, right? Because what Kevin McCarthy believes about governing is that we have to utilize these continuing resolutions, and if the continuing resolution is conservative enough, if you hang some bells and whistles on it, that really ought to pacify people who are right-leaning throughout the country. I believe that the only way to achieve programmatic reform and to put downward pressure on spending is to do what was done back in the 90s, where every individual bill is conferenced and debated and subject to amendment. And of course, you have to compromise. And of course, you have to govern.
Yeah, and by the way, again, I'm no simp for Kevin McCarthy. You know, when McCarthy said, well, the reason we didn't have our Appropriations Committee hearings earlier in the year, and it was until the last minute, was because Biden was over a month late with his budget. Bull. You don't wait for Biden to do your budget. You move forward. You say, day one, all right, let's begin the process right now. And Biden can send his budget. It's meaningless.
Yeah.
Okay. We're doing what we're doing. So, listen, McCarthy made some mistakes here. And I'm hardly, an apologist for him. But let me just say, if being on the side of Jim Jordan and being on the side of Tom Massey and being on the side of Chip Roy and being on the side of, by the way, Donald Trump, last I checked, was in support of Kevin McCarthy staying there, and being on the side of Mark Levin makes me a squishy, liberal in sheep's clothing. I'm sorry. Every single person that I just named, a real rock-ribbed conservative constitutionalist, they all said, even if I don't like McCarthy, this is not the right thing to do at this moment. Yeah. And I still agree it isn't. But here we are. You know
who keeps ringing in my ear after I watched it last night, I woke up this morning feeling that it's Brandon Michon, Loudon Dad, who went there, after painting all day, he's kind of in paint splattered clothes, and he goes, figure it out, right? He screams this at the Loudoun County School Board. And that, I don't know why that message is just ringing in my ear, but I feel like, look at what is concerning Americans. I mentioned earlier, just spending, insane amount of money on 2 bags of groceries, right? Gas prices continue to be high. The border, these images of crime, of this viral Brooklyn video of a guy in Brooklyn being stabbed to death. I mean, those
who voted with Matt Gaetz would say they agree with you, and that's why business as usual, we can't continue down that road. They're the ones who say, we've got to stop what we've been doing, and that's how we will get groceries.
Yeah, well, I am one. Yeah, having the hearings into the Biden administration, which is the cause of a lot of this problem, coming to a screeching halt thanks to this, that's not helpful.
And figure it out. It's not a high bar. Raise the freaking bar.
There you go. Brandon for speaker.
That's right. Yeah, there you go.
Brandon Michon for speaker.
Yes, there we go.
So who is going to be the speaker? We don't know. Now, Mr. Gaetz was asked, because a lot of people in this town...
Yeah, you'd think he'd have some ideas.
Well, he doesn't. A lot of people in this town, though, believe that this is really about Matt Gaetz positioning himself for the governorship in Florida after Ron DeSantis. And I think it's a pretty well-known, secret in this town that Matt Gaetz wants to be governor of Florida. There's a lot of indication that that's the case. And I do think let's have Matt Gaetz answer that question directly.
Do you plan to stay in the House? Have you thought of running for office, like maybe the governor's race in 2026? What is your thought there?
You know what, Laura? I think I'm exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to be doing. What I need to be doing is ensuring that we have, what's that?
You're not thinking about it at all? I mean, come on. You're an ambitious guy. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. But why are we playing cute here?
I'm not running for governor in 2026. I am here serving in the House in 2023 trying to get a budget. Why is it that when I'm trying to get a budget and single subject bills and a return to pre-COVID spending, all everyone's interested is in a political race that's 3 years from now? I am here doing this job. My voters elected me to do this.
All right. So that's certainly not a unequivocal or equivocal answer to the question. I can tell you that going back to Florida as the maverick who took on the establishment in D.C. is a very good talking point for someone who wants to be governor of that state. I
agree.
And I think that this absolutely bolsters his chances. And ironically, the other name you hear often about a potential rival for the Republican nomination for governor in Florida is Byron Donalds, who was on the other side of this one tonight. Yeah. Now, back in January, Byron Donalds was on the side of pushing back and not supporting Kevin McCarthy. But yesterday he did support Kevin McCarthy. Again, so, if you're a squishy, uniparty rhino because you support Kevin McCarthy yesterday and thought this wasn't the right thing at this time to do, then you're calling Byron Donalds a uniparty, squishy rhino establishment guy, which is hard to quite,
Yes,
you got to be a rock-ribbed
I need a
conservative.
whiteboard. I need some. I can't keep track of anything.
It's frustrating, and it's very frustrating, mostly for us, because we're hoping to continue down the line of investigations into the Biden administration. That was the one thing I wanted to achieve in this House, and that's stopping now. Cal Thomas will have opinions about this. He comes up in about 15 minutes, and we'll certainly, we're going to take your calls on this. I know that you want to speak out. And it's been a while since we've taken calls, and I know that this is a hot issue. So it's 7 o'clock. We're going to open up the lines, and we want to hear from you. And we're looking forward to that, too. It's 6:23.
Now,
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
The time is 6:37 on this Wednesday in the nation's capital, a historic day, as for the first time in history, the Speaker of the House has been removed from his position, as you know by now, and we're sort of putting the pieces together for you and telling you what happened, why it happened, and what's next. And again, I want to reiterate, both Julie and I are of the same mind on this. We're neither on Team McCarthy or Team Gates. We're on Team Get Stuff Done. Yeah, get
it
stuff done.
Yeah,
Just
figure it out.
done. And I don't think last night's actions help us achieve that.
Right.
I don't think, especially when it comes to the investigations, which we're really moving forward in the direction that we were been hoping. That said, we've got full analysis of this as we move forward, including your phone calls at 7:05. If you want to line up now, 888-630-9625. Coming up at 7:35, Byron York will join us. 8:05, Newt Gingrich, and at 8:35, David Marcus, who had a really good column. Yeah, that's a lot. And add to that, the cherry on top, I like to call him, Cal Thomas. Cal, good morning.
Well, good morning to you, too. Nice to be back in the country from my fact-finding trip on the origins of the croissant in France.
So jealous.
I found that they are flaky, just like some of these members of Congress.
And we're off and running. All right, Cal. Listen, I mean, again, we're not here to carry water for Kevin McCarthy, but I don't think it takes a whole lot of analysis to recognize that the timing yesterday, in the middle of all the things that are going on in the House, is not great for those who are in favor of the Republican majority succeeding.
You know, you talk about President Biden being in decline. I think that would fit the Republicans, or at least 9 of them in the House. 9 members of the Republican Party overruled the majority of their party to oust Kevin McCarthy. I like what the Wall Street Journal editorial said about this morning. They united, the 9, united with Democrats to topple a Republican speaker without a plan, a replacement, or even a policy goal in mind. 4% of the Republican conference trumped the 96% who supported the speaker. This is just crazy. And, of course, the Democrats are completely united. They're just laughing it up like crazy. Biden will probably have something to say about it today. But what in the world? Why give these people power if they don't know what they're doing?
Listen, I hear you. Let me just say this, though, Cal. Speaker McCarthy went through that torturous 10 days of sort of prostrating himself to get the gavel. He knew what he was walking into. He knew that at any given time, one person would stand up and have the motion to vacate the House. He agreed to that. And yet he moved forward anyway. You know, You're right. It's at 8 Republicans to join Democrats to do this. But the fact is, Kevin McCarthy walked into the job knowing that this could happen, and maybe he shouldn't have done it in the first place.
You're right. Maybe he shouldn't have done it in the first place. When you give up too much, it's like any other kind of negotiations. If you try to negotiate with Iran or negotiate with Russia or negotiate with China, you don't start out by conceding a lot of things, hoping that the other side or people who disagree with you are going to come to your defense and support. I mean, this just shows weakness the more you concede. This whole one vote, all it takes to have a vote on the vacating of the speakership is ridiculous. That's not democracy. That's not order. That's not common sense. I mean, as you said, they've got these investigations going on. You've got another 40 days now or so before we have the threat of another phony government shutdown. There's a lot. You got the border, of course, which is not even porous but wide open. All these important things. The American people look on this stuff and they say, these people are certifiably crazy. None of this stuff relates to us.
Right.
The food prices, the gas prices, anything else. What are they doing there? Why did we send them there? And ultimately, the real fault is on the voters. If you don't like what's going on in Washington, change what's going on in Washington by changing the personnel.
Well, Gates would say it is because of this dysfunction in Washington that we see some of these things happening. And he gave a very compelling speech on the House floor yesterday. But what do you say to these charges that it's personal for Matt Gaetz, that he was angry that McCarthy didn't stand up for him enough with this ethics investigation, and now he's getting his revenge? What do you think about that theory about Gates's motives?
Well, politics is personal at some level, and for some people, it's deeper at other levels. Yeah, I think that's part of it. But the real problem, Julie, is that they don't have the votes, they being the Republicans. You can talk all you want about passing legislation about cutting the size and cost of government, reducing regulations, strengthening the border, more money for the border control, all of those worthy goals, something most Republicans, if not all, could support. But if you don't have the votes, if you don't have the Senate, if you don't have the presidency, it's just all show.
Cal Thomas, I want to play for you something from Kevin McCarthy's extraordinary press conference last night after all of this shook down and he announced that he would not put himself up to be speaker again. Listen to this moment.
Interesting. It was in this room after we had won the majority. I had become speaker last, and Nancy Pelosi came to me. She was speaker at the time on the way out. And I told her I was having issues with getting enough votes. And she said, "What's the problem?" I said, "They want this one person can rule you out." She was the only speaker to have changed that rule. I had the power to call the vote on her, but I never would. I lost some votes because of it. And she said, "Just give it to him. I'll always back you up." I made the same offer to Boehner and same thing to Paul, because I believe.
So basically he's saying that Pelosi told him, go ahead and give them the one person can vacate rule. I'll back you up. I'll bail you out. He was counting on Pelosi and Democrats to protect him here. Doesn't he kind of get what he deserves? What's he doing trusting Nancy Pelosi after all this?
Yeah. You can add that promise, too. Of course, I'll respect you in the morning. The gun isn't loaded. The microphone is off. And, just a long list of things. Anybody who believes Nancy Pelosi, give me a break.
That's right. That's right. All right. We got to leave it there. Well done, Cal. Thank you, sir. It is 6:43. I'm sorry. We're laughing because it's so absurd. But honestly, I mean, that
really is.
Nancy Pelosi. Oh, yeah, go ahead. One person vacate. I got your back.
Trust her.
That's why she still had her,
but she meant
her
it this
hideaway
time.
office. Yeah. All right. Quick palate cleanser here. A little sorbet between courses.
It's so good.
We do want to take your calls at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What's just happened? What's next? And do you think this was a good idea, what happened in the House yesterday? We want to hear from you. Yesterday, a video emerged. This is fantastic. It's a women's tech conference. Women are vastly underrepresented in the STEM world, right? We hear this all the time.
STEM for girls, STEM for girls,
right? And so now you get your degree, and now you want a job. You want a job at one of these high-tech companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had a conference that was for women only.
Women only.
Because we're trying to promote women in the STEM world, right? But here's what happened. A bunch of dudes showed up.
Love it.
And they registered as gender non-binary.
Mm-hmm. Career conference for females in tech was taken over by male attendees.
They were there just purely for the career fair.
Social media clips filmed at the Grace Hopper, the world's largest gathering of women technologists, show men standing in line to meet with recruiters.
This is a space for women.
Oh.
This is one of those few limited resources that isn't for you. It's for us.
Some of the male attendees reportedly lied about being non-binary.
Apparently lied. But it's interesting that the large majority of the people that actually ended up in the event had name tags with he, him, and have no searchable history of identifying as non-binary.
Yeah. Several tech workers defended the men for trying to capitalize on job opportunities not meant for them, saying that the entire concept was wrong.
Let's be honest, there is no need for a conference just for women, because if it was the opposite for men, then it would be sexist. Just because you are a woman doesn't give you the right to talk to a big firm recruiter. Guys work just as hard and they don't get that chance.
Interesting take there.
Yeah.
So here's what's help me out. You're with Independent Women's Forum.
We
so
cover
you
this
understand.
issue. Yeah.
So if men are willing to go to a tech conference and sort of check that gender non-binary box so they can get a job, then wouldn't like a demonic, maniacal, perverted child molester kind of dude pretend that he's gender non-binary to get into a women's
These
locker
are the rules,
room,
Larry,
or to get into a women's bathroom?
These are the rules now. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm constantly told nobody will do that.
Right.
No one's going to do that. Men aren't going to go into a girl's bathroom.
It's the true transgender individual who wants to live and exist and examine his feminine side. Yeah, spare me. I love this so much, and I encourage men to continue to invade women's spaces. And I love like this woman doesn't, I bet this woman who was so appalled by this, right?
Yeah.
This is a woman's space.
This is a women's.
Never, her intellect doesn't go far enough to allow her to consider what this means for women's sports.
Yeah.
The fact that women are losing places on the podium, women are losing scholarships, women are losing money.
Women are being victimized in the locker room by being gawked at.
Having to look at male genitalia in the locker room. Women are being intimidated. I mean, Riley Gaines and another one of her teammates had to change in a coat closet or a janitor's closet rather than share space with Leah Thomas. So the bottom line is that when women start waking up to this and realizing that the rules that they have supported are going to mean this type of thing, where men can identify as, they can identify as anything these days, and then attend these women's events, maybe that will finally break this wide open.
Maybe. It is kind of funny that this was... this event apparently got, and by the way, it cost about $1,300. The conference set up to tackle the lack of women's representation in tech. Tickets were $1,300 to limit the number of attendees. But
I guarantee you, this woman, if you had asked her what is a woman, she would have said anybody who identifies as a woman.
That's right.
Which is what these men did. So these are the rules. Live with it, lady.
It's 6:52.